Let's have a look at the morning papers and the morning Sunday websites now. And reviewing the papers for us this morning, Stuart Hughes from the BBC's World Affairs unit and Glynn Pegler, who is the CEO of Culture Group, an international strategy consultancy that started in Wales. Not every day I get to say this. He's also the Honorary Consul to Wales for Mexico. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Glynn, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, nothing quite fills up the Sunday papers like a royal wedding on the front and stories of Brexit. But obviously, COVID-19 has been a theme across all the papers. Wales on Sunday leading with the story of miracle lockdown baby who's survived many health problems and in spite of COVID is now a great story of joy, born 2 days before the lockdown. And while there have been no new COVID deaths on 3 different days in Wales this week, the news now that gyms and playgrounds reopen in Wales from tomorrow, I guess brings a bigger question of what does our new normal look like? Because while they are opening, as highlighted by Wales on Sunday also, likewise, if you actually wanted to go on holiday anytime soon, you'd better ensure your passport's up to date, because the Sunday Telegraph front page has a story that people are expecting a wait of up to 4 months now in some instances to get a new passport.
Stuart, what have you seen?
Yeah, I've been increasingly focusing on China in the paper reviews here on Sunday Supplement, and I'm going to do that again this week because there's a number of stories this morning signalling very clearly that China's emerging as the dominant foreign policy issue for Britain. Sunday Times saying the social media app TikTok's broken off talks to open a global headquarters in Britain. The reason is that the parent company of TikTok's been accused of working with the Chinese police to produce propaganda videos about the Uyghur population. And the Sunday Times says the parent company of TikTok had been in negotiations over setting up a base in London, but those have been suspended. The Observer, meanwhile, leads with a claim that the government's privately told Huawei that it was banned from Britain's 5G network partly for geopolitical reasons, those geopolitical reasons largely being pressure from the White House, and it indicates that Huawei's been told that the decision could be reversed, especially if President Trump fails to win a second term. China's going to feature very prominently in the news agenda this week because the US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's coming to the UK, and he's going to meet backbench MPs who take a hawkish view on China, which sends out a signal about where he's coming from. But back in the Observer, Simon Tisdall summarises the dilemma that Britain is facing over China. On the one hand, tapping into Beijing's economic cloud is absolutely vital to the success of Brexit. But on the other hand, cozying up to China at the moment could risk a trade deal with the United States, which Britain also needs. And at the heart of it, according to Simon Tisdale, is an uncomfortable fact. In global terms, Britain just isn't as important as it likes to think it is. And Simon Tisdale says Britain's engaged in a risky gamble on expanding relationships with 2 superpowers that don't rate or respect it, and that Boris Johnson is just a piggy in the middle.
Fascinating. Glynn, what else have you seen?
I think that leads quite nicely, really. What is our role in the world as Wales going forward? And the Sunday Telegraph leads with the interview with the Prime Minister comparing any potential second national lockdown to the nuclear deterrent, in that his likelihood of wanting to instigate that. And the Guardian cites that because of COVID-19, businesses in the UK are even more unprepared now for Brexit, commenting that 2/3 of companies have no plans at all for preparation and are less prepared now than they were a year ago due to COVID. That's according to the Institute for Government think tank. The Express, by similar token, has a piece about the upcoming report due this week on the potential Russian interference in the Brexit referendum question. And there's questions if this report will be used as an attempt to further sabotage Brexit.
Stuart.
The Sunday Times' political editor, Tim Shipman's always worth a read, especially when he's writing one of his often racy and riveting accounts of recent political history. He's got one in the paper today. It's a fascinating time in political history, as you were just discussing with John Rentoul. And Tim Shipman focuses on the evening of Monday, April the 6th, when Boris Johnson was in hospital seriously ill with COVID-19. And Tim Shipman says that night the Prime Minister was too weak to communicate with his aides, and he reveals that ministers came within hours of being told to formally select a stand-in Prime Minister. And remember, the prognosis for Boris Johnson at that time really was pretty grim. The survival rates for COVID-19 patients in intensive care was only about 50%. So Boris Johnson sort of had a 50-50 chance of pulling through. And 1A tells Tim Shipman, I talked to a lot of people that night. We all knew the odds. It was a coin flip at best. I thought we were going to lose him. Tim Shipman is due to publish a new book next year, early next year, and I'm sure, like the two previous books he's written about the Brexit campaign and its aftermath, by the indications in the Sunday Times today, his next book's going to be an absolute must-read.
Yeah, it sounds a horrendous story, that one, Stuart. Glynn, what else have you got?
I think there's an interesting link there to an angle the Guardian's picked up on, really. There's another story that's in the papers today about the Prime Minister's weight loss since he was hospitalised with COVID-19. But the Guardian are actually saying that junk food is the new tobacco, and it argues that obviously, as we know that being overweight can be a significant complicating factor in developing COVID-19, it argues that we're all fighting 5 million years of evolution of humans developing to like high-calorie items, as 40 charities in the Obesity Health Alliance are calling for everything now from a ban on junk venues near our schools, as well as fast food advertising appearing on TV and media not after 9 p.m. As just some examples of the idea of campaigning, or also alongside plain packaging on food. The Sun's story follows up there that 57% of adults in their survey have a fear now of catching COVID-19 and will not actually be visiting a restaurant next month to take advantage of the Chancellor's half-price deal vouchers. I think that's something that, interestingly, the Sun picks up on too, which is the stark contrast, really, that the Prime Minister's calling for 70% of workers to return to work, yet 1 in 5 of us apparently aren't sure if it's safe to do so, according to their survey. And 54% of people are accepting that they have no choice but to go back to work.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. Stuart, what else have you got?
Yeah, one thing I've noticed, as Glynn says, people don't seem to be going to restaurants in the numbers that the hospitality industry would hope. But they do seem, certainly from the evidence of the open spaces near where I live, is that they're instead going to the park and having takeaway food there instead. As the lockdown measures have eased, the amount of rubbish that's being strewn around in my neighbourhood has absolutely exploded, and in my area volunteers are organising themselves to go out and pick up those litter boxes and beer cans that are being strewn around the parks everywhere. And depressingly, the same seems to go for some of the most beautiful parts of Britain, including places like Snowdonia. The Observer says that beauty spots are being put at risk by increasing numbers of wild campers leaving behind piles of rubbish and lighting fires, and there are concerns that as the holiday season gets into full swing, that's just going to get worse. Someone who loves spending time in the great outdoors, especially in Anglesey and Gwynedd, I find this story just so depressing and inexplicable. I can't understand why anyone who wants to escape the city and spend time in solitude and beauty would then treat the place like a rubbish dump. You know, often you see signs in the countryside saying leave nothing but footprints, but according to this report about fly camping and fly tipping in the countryside, in the Observer, it seems many inconsiderate people think it's okay to leave more than footprints and leave mountains of rubbish there as well.
I guess though, Stuart, that's because they're not people who are going because it's beautiful or for the countryside. They're people who are going because they got nowhere else to go. You know, they're people who would otherwise be going to music festivals or to clubs or to pubs or whatever, and they've just displaced that activity.
It does feel like that, and the Observer article does say that a sort of festival mentality seems to have overtaken some people, that because, I hate to say it, but I suspect it's younger people as well, because they're denied their chance to go to music festivals and the outdoor events they would normally go to this year, that they're choosing to go to the countryside as well, and taking that rather stubborn and inconsiderate mentality with them.
Glynn?
I mean, I just want to echo that, really. I live in the countryside, and I've seen a great increase in the numbers of people that have been coming to the countryside and indeed leaving rubbish. I think there's a really interesting thing around the statistics of people who are now, out of work. And that potentially by the end of the year, we're going to see UK unemployment figures rising to even 12%. And, meanwhile, the Sun is also reporting that 48% of students would like all or some of their money back if they've been unable to attend education or courses have been made mainly online. And I think that's that wider theme of this displacement of activity now that COVID-19 has produced for us all, and particularly in the year that we're heading into all of the necessary Brexit arrangements, whatever those may be.
Stuart, we probably have time for one more story, I should think. You've got another one for us?
Yes, a quick one from me. If you like chess and you like boxing, you'll love chess boxing. Sunday Times says both sports have a long history and they've been combined into the ultimate test of brains and brawn. In chess boxing, participants compete over 11 rounds, 6 of chess, 5 of boxing, and victory is achieved via knockout or checkmate. They're about to hold their first chess boxing pay-per-view contest on the card. Daniel the Taxman Mayfield versus Richard Razor Fraser. Chess purists, not surprisingly, are outraged. They call it a freak show, but devotees of chess boxing disagree. They say chess boxing makes chess sexy and it deserves to be an Olympic sport.
I'm just sort of gobsmacked by that. I can't think of sort of two less compatible things to put together. It's sort of like, I don't know, drafts and pole dancing or strawberry cheesecake or something like that. It just doesn't belong in the real world. Thank you both very much indeed to Stuart Hughes and Glynn Pegler, reviewing the papers for us this morning. You can listen again to this programme on BBC Sounds, the app for music, radio and podcasts. If you want advance notice of guests and subjects, follow @WalesPolitics on Twitter. And there's more Welsh politics on BBC One today with Politics Wales, and that's at 10 o'clock. After the news is All Things Considered. Bore da chi.